Hello everyone and welcome along to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. The bulk of today's show is looking ahead to the biggest flat meeting of the season, Royal Ascot, alongside me, to my left as always, Steve Ryder, but a particularly warm welcome to Lydia Hislop, making her first appearance on Racing Weekly, leading broadcaster and journalist in the sport of racing. Lydia, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Rishi.
We always start off by asking people what they've made of the flat season so far. Maybe a particular highlight to warm us up into the action.
I've really enjoyed it. It's been fascinating watching the whole journey of City of Troy from the 2,000 guineas to the Derby. That was really compulsive, I think, for most people. I really enjoyed the 1,000 guineas as well. I'm sure we'll be getting deeply into that form and its impact on the Coronation Stakes. I found the Guineas weekend really good, despite the mammoth card on the Saturday. I really enjoyed that weekend.
Well, the two races were fantastic, and they've sort of been a precursor to what's coming up at Royal Ascot, St James's Palace and the Coronation as well. Steve, I haven't seen you for a bit, missed the last one, and obviously we're a little bit later into the week. How's things gone? I think you did quite well whilst I was away with your own tipping for the Mail, is that right?
Yeah, I went through the card at Lingfield, which was quite nice.
Well done.
Including a 40-1 winner. So
included a 40-1 Simon Dow winner.
Absolutely fantastic.
6,000 and something to 1 accumulator, which would have been nice if I'd have put a pound on, which I did not.
And you didn't. Always the way, always the way. Before we get into all the racing action and discussing what we've seen and what's still to come, a little bit about you, Liz. Obviously, we've worked together for a long time, but you've been involved in the sport even before that, with the Times, the Evening Standard.
Yeah, Sporting Life before that.
Sporting Life, how did you get into it?
So my granddad was a mad keen punter. He wasn't very good. He certainly wouldn't have gone through the card at Lingfield. He was famous for telling you what was going to win a race for about a week in advance and then changing his mind right as he put the bet on. And obviously the original horse would always win. That was what he was absolutely famous for in our family. Anyway, he got me into horse racing. I used to go to, I'm from Wolverhampton, we used to go to Wolverhampton races together a lot. I was allowed to bunk off for the Wednesday of the Cheltenham Festival back in the days when it was 3 days. My parents were pretty strict, but they let me do that, and that was great. So I really love the Queen Mother Champion Chase. Enjoyed going to see that year on year. And then after I went to university, I kind of didn't want to become a management consultant or a lawyer like everybody else, and so I applied for some work experience at the Sporting Life and the Racing Post, and the Sporting Life replied by return post, as it was then. Wow. And I went down for an interview and they said, come along and do some work experience for a month. If we like you, you can stay for 3. And I ended up staying for 4. And then I sort of tumbled into one job after another after that.
We worked together on the original At the Races.
We did.
BBC.
We did.
And together on Racing TV. Now, I mean, you have established yourself, without sparing your blushes, you've established yourself as one of the best practitioners in the sport of racing.
Bless you, that's very kind of you, Rishi.
Well, you have. I mean, it's pretty. No one can really argue with that. How much do you enjoy it?
I love it, yeah. I still really love it. I mean, I go racing for fun. I think that's important, not only to go there sort of professionally, but also to experience it as a fan and as a punter would do normally. So I try and do that as much as I possibly can. You know, I often go with a bunch of friends and we enjoy the racing in that kind of way. Yeah, I still absolutely love it. And there's nothing, I mean, I really like immersing myself in the form and the preparation beforehand. And when a race meeting is going well, I mean, you know, I enjoyed the Dante Festival tremendously, just from start to finish, and you just feel immersed in it, and it just flashes by in that way.
Yeah. One of the best things, of course, about you is that you've earned a reputation over the years of being one of the bravest interviewers of us all. I mean, you put some of us to shame a lot of the times. I want to ask about how you sometimes approach those. I mean, I'm using it as an opportunity to discuss it with you, actually. But how do you approach the very difficult ones? Does the heart beat a lot faster?
Very much so, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not nice, is it? Because, I mean, you know that you don't feel great doing it. I mean, you know you've got to do it. You know you should do it. But for, you know, the professionalism, those questions need to be asked, and that's what you're there for. So you're representing the viewer, and it's what the viewer wishes to be asked. So it should be asked. So, but then again, when you're putting somebody on the spot and asking a question that you know that they don't particularly want to answer, you know, you obviously don't relish it, do you? Right. But so you have to think about how to put it. you take into account how experienced the interviewee is as well. So, you know, I'd approach a young jockey differently than I would somebody who's established in the sport for a very long time. I would sometimes prepare the interviewee that I'm going to ask a question if I thought that there's a risk that they're not prepared that it's going to happen. Sometimes I won't. Again, it's a matter of judgment. And I suppose I will. If I have something that I very particularly want to ask that is very difficult, particularly if it's legally fraught, I would be thinking very carefully about how I phrase it and sort of practicing it in my head as I screw up the courage to go and do it.
And nowadays, of course, the reaction to it. I mean, obviously, when you started on television, it was a very different outcome for the fallout afterwards. Nowadays, because of social media, it's a very different thing to deal with. How do you deal with that, both the negative and the positive that comes out of it?
Do you mean within the sport from participants or
Both.
with social media?
The whole lot, because I think it's an all-encompassing reaction.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Well, it used to be much harder within the sport itself because the participants within the sport weren't accustomed to being asked difficult questions and found it difficult to handle. I think it was probably exacerbating that it was a woman asking the question quite often as well. I think that would have been a factor, 20 years ago.
Much?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's evolved quite a lot. I think, and also the attitude towards being asked questions. I think that has evolved within the sport quite a lot. And then you've got the wider social media. I mean, whenever you're broadcasting, I mean, you know this, whenever you're broadcasting, you're always sort of speaking to the reasonable people in the middle, aren't you? I tend to ignore extreme praise and extreme criticism. And there are some people who you can never please at any point. And, they'll say, why haven't you done X or Y? And then when, they won't even bother to look whether that's true or not. It's just sort of, that is infuriating. So you're always broadcasting and talking to the reasonable middle, and that's in everything, aren't you? When you're talking about any kind of subject, but even when horse racing is sort of tackling different subjects, it should always be talking to the reasonable middle.
Is there any one in particular, any one interview in particular, over the course of your 22 years broadcasting experience that stands out? Or
for
just the
Can I think about that during the course of the
please,
show?
yeah, maybe we can come back to
I haven't really
later
thought
on.
about it.
I just thought I'd ask you now.
Because it was because it was challenging, or because I was particularly pleased with the outcome?
Because it was challenging would be what I'd like to ask. One that you felt at the end, well, I think it kind of goes that it was challenging, you overcame it, and you felt pleased with how it went.
Okay.
Probably one that involved Nicky Henderson, I don't know.
Oh, you're thinking about the Altior one?
Well, it could have been 100 ones of it. The ones about the horses not going on the ground and stuff like that. I mean, have a think about it.
Yeah, I will.
Have a
Okay.
think about it. Once Lydia does that, we will also ask her to multitask as well, because we are going to get into this week's racing recap. We're not going to spend that much time on Racing Recap because, of course, Royal Ascot hangs over us with far more interest coming up than perhaps what we've seen over the last week or so. But we'll start with the John Of Gaunt at Haydock and the Tiber Flow performance. I'll start with you. Primarily, for me, looking at that race, just great to see the horse do what he did after what happened at York.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, he was so unfortunate, getting squeezed out, clipping heels and taking one of the most spectacular tumbles I have ever seen, and then see a horse and jockey get up okay. And Maureen Haggis said afterwards that she was running down the track, full of fear, and Tiber Flow was sort of cantering towards her going, what's going on? And she was so relieved. So it was great to see that. I mean, he clearly excelled over a stiff 7 furlongs. Stepping up to back up to 7 furlongs. And I thought that he enjoyed the strongly run race. He was dropped out and he came through really strongly. It opens up new horizons, I think, for him in terms of campaign this season. Obviously, he won the Chip Chase last season, and I can see that being a target, the Stiff 6 at Newcastle. But it does open up things like the Hungerford potentially for him. And so rather than trying, he even dabbled with 5 furlongs last season. I think you'll see him at the Stiff 6, 7 furlongs for the rest of the season now that we've had that performance.
Yeah, a lot more options for him, whether it's the Lennox, he maybe go to, if he's good enough, maybe the
City of York.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel he's not good enough for that, but I think something like the Hungerford, something like the Lennox might help him.
Okay, what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. We always say around the lack of Group 1s over 7 furlongs, but he's not quite up at that level.
Yeah.
This was his first run over 7 furlongs since August 2022. And described as a hardy little battler by Tom Marquand. And that's exactly what he is. I was quite taken with the second, Sirona, beating a length. ran really well, improved since joining David Menizio from Charlie Johnston. Has finished strongly in 7 furlongs on her last 2 starts. It wouldn't surprise me if she steps up to a mile next time that we see her. And then a good shout out to Pogo as well. I think this is his 31st race in a row running at listed or group level. I napped him actually on the show last week, and yeah, I thought he had a good chance. And once again, he just always runs into those high 100 rating. Yeah. And if there is one that's on a going day that will beat him, they will. But you can definitely have the form around him. Yeah,
he ran really well the time before that behind Shartash, who obviously heads to the Royal Ascot. Briefly on the Achilles Stakes, Believing, who we may touch on again because she could take in a couple of races at the Royal meeting. She won, but I think Living the Dream was, for me, the story that he was really disappointing.
Yeah, because the way that he drifted in the Temple Stakes, you thought he's definitely going to need the run, and he kind of outran those odds of 8-1 to finish second that day, and yeah, was well supported here. I stumbled slightly, but you'd be really disappointed in what he achieved. I was really taken with Believing, and I think Bet365 straight after the race went 16-1, and that's now been cut into 10-1, and it took a little while for the public and the punters to actually latch onto her, but yeah, she could take in both engagements at Royal Ascot next week. She did back up, I think, only 8 days later last season, so she can do it, and it's going to be intriguing to see how she gets on in that King Charles Stakes. Connections
were effusive about her from the very start of the season.
Yeah,
she was
took her to shut in.
Yeah.
The thing that she's had that's held her back is she has a tendency to fluff the start, and so she managed to get it right last time. That's only her second go at 5 furlongs. Last time she did it, she reared in the stalls, which is the kind of thing she does. And she's completely unexposed at it and really sort of strongly run 5 furlongs. Made me feel that the King Charles III Stakes might be more her bag than the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes. I think I've got that right, haven't I?
That's excellent.
Thank
That's
you.
Excellent.
I thought Living the Dream did too much, didn't he? I mean, I agree. I mean, he stumbled a little bit, but he just did a bit too much.
It's a big challenge for them because if they want to get him to the Breeders' Cup, which has been the big target all season long, this is the first real blip in the road since
conditions should have suited.
So that's a big challenge for them. The Pinnacle Stakes, big shout out to Anthony Ennis, who gave Queen of the Pride and Lady Boba a shout. I think you gave Lady Boba a decent shout as well, didn't you? But a filly with a lovely pedigree. I love the way she quickened up and travelled into the race. And she looks like, I mean, unless I'm wrong here, she looks like she's going to keep on improving.
Yeah, I think she will. I got the impression that she was a lengthener. I think she's got the ability probably to go up in trip. I thought that she kind of got first run on Lady Boba. I think she could be a bit more adaptable of the two. And I think they'll be really happy with that start to the season from Lady Boba. And I wouldn't be inclined to completely give up on Sea Theme either in 4th.
Yeah, I thought she stayed on nicely, one to look out for. And even the third, Mistral Star Connections, could point to the fact she didn't get a clean run and had to switch out late on. So I think overall, I think the race is going to work out quite nicely, and it may not be exactly as it was in that race.
Yeah, we may well get a rematch through later in the season. You wouldn't see any reason why not. I thought Queen of the Pride really stepped forward, and she showed greenness at Goodwood, didn't she? And looked a lot more professional in this. I think Lady Boba probably appreciates softer ground. The rain didn't really come. Like, we had a bit of forecast rain. It didn't quite happen. Her performance at Fontainebleau on soft ground was really, really good. I don't know, the going readings over in France are a debate that we can, a topic we can debate. But yeah, I thought a bit of softer ground and Lady Boba would reverse that form.
Okay. Anything else that you want to mention in the last week, 10 days of note?
Well, I quite liked the 2-year-old trophy, the Condition Stakes that was won by Shareholder and beating Moving Force. I like both of them in their different ways. Shareholder making his debut and having to prove himself potentially being good enough to Royal Ascot, and that was what Carl Burke felt that he was going to ask the question about. And then Moving Force as well, who for Richard Fahey was conceding £7 to the winner. I thought he also shaped with promise. They both look as though they've got talent, those two 2-year-olds.
Yeah, I like the way that Shareholder seemed to respond to Moving Force coming to him. It looked like he was still learning very much about what he was meant to be doing. So, yeah, both horses looked exciting. Any thoughts on the week that you'd like to add?
Yeah, just on that, yeah, James Doyle seemed at pains to think Royal Ascot isn't far away, 6-1 for the Norfolk, and he'd have a chance in that. He kind of was mindful to try and win by a short distance as possible to give him the easiest race. Perfect Park, we've got to mention her. Like, what a brilliant performance in the Hillary Needler, sent off 125-1, but she'd have been a really unlucky loser if she hadn't got the gap. A lot of the chat after the race was how unlucky Moorland was, and she was, no question about it. But the winner was absolutely brilliant. Picked up for 10 grand privately after a breeze. Connections have obviously done it. Keith Brown had top-notch Tonto, I think it was about $3,000. So yeah, it is good for the smaller connections. And a shout out to Lava Stream. She won the listed race at Goodwood on Sunday. It was a bit of a kind of a family affair because Iron Lion had won at Haydock. That's the half brother. So really good for the owner breeders there. And yeah, a good weekend. But
Yeah.
Did they mention that Iron Lion might be a Melbourne Cup horse at some point? Is that what
possibly
they're suggesting?
Igor would be another option.
Right, okay. I hadn't read that. I did like Lava Stream's performance. I thought she did really well to run down Bolsena because Bolsena was trying to control the race and pretty much did.
Yeah.
And Lava Stream was able to get there, and I think she's much more impressive than the winning distance will suggest.
Favourite in that race, particularly disappointing, but I wouldn't give up on her.
Again, very early days in her career.
Yeah. Right, that has been this week's Racing Recap. Before we get into our Royal Ascot preview, just to let you know that our sponsor Bet365 have a best odds guaranteed offer. It's available on every single UK and Irish race from 8 a.m. on the day of the race. If you take a price and the SP is bigger, Bet365 will pay you at the bigger odds. Full T's and C's can be found on the website. And so to Royal Ascot we go, and we will kick off with the opening race, which is of course the Queen Anne Stakes. Now, there is a little bit of uncertainty about whether or not Inspiral's going to run here or indeed in the Prince of Wales's on the Wednesday. And so that leaves us with a little bit of uncertainty how we go ahead and preview the race. Let's just have a look at the market for it at the moment with Bet365. Factor Cheval and Inspiral 3-1 joint favourites. Sharon 7-2, Big Rock 6-1, Audience 10s and 16-1 or bigger the remainder. If Inspiral were to run in this race, how would you see her chances?
Strong, I think. I mean, the vibes seem to be that they might be leaning towards the Prince of Wales's stakes with her. She wouldn't want a great deal of rain, I don't think. She did just look very rusty in the Lockinge, I thought, first time around. But if we're looking at which horses are capable of elite level form, she is. Big Rock is
In his conditions.
if things go right for him. I'm not 100% convinced that he definitely needs soft ground. And looking at those prices as they are, with him being 6-1, fourth in of the best, and he's got the second best form in the race. I mean, I'm more looking towards him and Factor Cheval. You can say that Factor Cheval against Big Rock, that maybe Big Rock slipped the field in the QE2 at the back end of last season, potentially revelling in that kind of ground. But he does have some more form on a sounder surface as well. He's built to be better as he gets older. So I'm not completely convinced yet about the ground, and at those prices I'd be prepared to take a risk. I certainly would have Sharon of the four at the top of the market, the longest price of all of those four, even though he has improved this season. Yeah,
he's been rock solid and consistent, Sharon, and obviously chased down Audience. How do you see it, if you include Inspiral and obviously without Inspiral?
Yeah, many people put the Lockinge as a two-horse race before Inspiral and Big Rock, and I'd be in the same agreement with Lydia that Big Rock at the prices, out of the two of those, would be the best bet there, because he is capable of that proper standout piece of form as we saw in the QE2. Like you said, Sharon is solid, and you can understand people backing him each way because he's pretty sure he'll then place, but you'd be disappointed if he was winning this. I'd take a flyer at a couple in this, to be honest. I can't get the run of Maljoom in the St James's Palace a couple of years ago out of my head. It is worth going back and watching it again. We all knew how unlucky he was, but then you watch it again and you think, oh my God, you're even more unlucky than I remember. It obviously all went wrong last year. He only made the track once, and then they ran him at Ascot on his reappearance, and it was very much a pipe opener. He's never made the running before and kind of didn't know what he was doing, and only beaten 2 1/4 lengths that day. I just think this is going to be run completely to suit a closer, because they're not going to give Audience an easy lead. Big Rock's definitely going to go forward again, I'm sure. Sharon's always going to be prominent. So I think it might actually suit a closer, and that might also bring Docklands into it. Now, he also has an entry in the Wolferton on the same day, and he's jocked up for both, so there's no clue on where he's going to go. But he'd be another that has brilliant Ascot form. Won the Britannia last year, finished third in the Balmoral Handicap, and then was in the same race at Ascot last time. Went over to France, was staying on well at the finish. But I just think if they go too hard up front in order to stop Audience getting an easy lead, both of them will be closing well at the finish, and they're both 16-1 with Bet365.
Okay. Factor Cheval I liked I just thought he was the solid horse.
And that run style will be suited by the scenario that Steve has just
Indeed. Last year, I think a lot of people thought he was just a soft ground horse, because you remember he came over for the Sussex and he ended up finishing second to Paddington, and obviously that horrible ground, and people thought, oh, he needed that sort of... And actually, when he went to Dubai, I'd been sucked into the same thing, thinking, well, the ground might just be a bit on the quick side for him. But he produced a career best on that ground, and it was decent, quick ground. And he generally seems to run his race. And I think he's also improved. And that race has worked out quite well on the international scene. So I think he's a solid favourite.
And a stiff mile is going to suit him as well. There's a lot of positives for him, I think. It was just a price-related play on Big Rock, particularly as he stumbled at the start, and the trainer has made no secret of his disdain for the fact that the rider reacted, and I understand rightly, reacted by riding the horse along early in the Metra and getting a prominent position rather than waiting for the horse to get back into his stride naturally.
On that subject, so it's interesting in the paper today, I think it is, he speaks about the ride on Big Rock in the Lockinge, and he then speaks about the ride on Blue Rose Sen in her recent run, where he again blames Aurélien Lemaitre. Now, there are some people in the sport who'll go, that's disloyal to do that openly. But isn't there also a side to saying, well, I'm quite interested in how the trainer's thought through the jockey change. He's not just made the jockey change and left it to us to assume. I know, obviously, Aurélien Lemaitre comes out badly on that. But overall, I'm pleased with the candid nature of it.
Well, I mean, certainly... I mean, I'm kind of torn because quite often it's very, very easy to blame the rider, isn't it? And that's the easy thing to do. But you look at the Big Rock race, and you have to agree with the trainer's analysis. I mean, he would seem to be spot on. The other one, I'm not quite so sure. And I suppose it depends on what the... I mean, do you want a continuing relationship with this rider, you know, or not? I mean, there's a whole load of things, like whenever you're, like, if a manager criticises a player in a football team, is that better done openly, or is it better done in private for the team? Yeah. So I think there's a whole load of things to weigh up from a sort of punter point of view and from a viewer point of view, a fan point of view. Obviously, it's great to have candour.
Now you want Aurélien Lemaitre's response.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. You're going to be cheering on See the Lady and the Duke of Cambridge. You've got Aurélien Lemaitre and Christopher Head. Yeah. And then, if you're interviewing them after the race, you'll absolutely love it. Lovely.
I'll be taking advice from Lydia. Let's move on and talk about the King Charles III Stakes, used to be known as the King's Stand. Bradsell won it last year. He was a 3-year-old. Big Evs is the favourite at 3-1. A 3-year-old, very good 2-year-old, and looked good on his comeback run. Regional 9-2, Asfura 7-1, Believing 10s, Kurdos 10s, Rogue Lightning 10s, Twilight Calls 10s, and then 16-1 bar those. Steve, I'll let you kick off here. How good was Big Ev's comeback, and did you see something different about him in the way that he was ridden that day?
Yeah, was ridden with a little bit more patience, but I loved the fact that he was just speedy out the gates and gone. I thought that was one of his qualities. So whether they just, I don't know, wanted to try something different that day, I'd be against him at the prices. I like Twilight Calls. I just think he's the solid one. I put him up a couple of weeks ago for oddschecker on our site, and I'm thrilled at the fact that Aesop's Fable isn't running, so he gets to be partnered by Ryan Moore once again. Finished second behind Nature Strip in this a couple of years ago. There's no Nature Strip in this year. Henry Candy, amazingly, still hasn't had a winner this season. So for him to run that well in the Palace House, I thought was brilliant after fluffing the start. Looked rusty that day, but finished ahead of Kurdos and Mitbahi, who have both boosted the form since. The fact that he's a double-figure price, I do think is a strong each-way bet. And then just a couple, and this is regards to the weather. We're still not sure really how much rain Ascot's going to get. If they do get some, I thought Vadrine was overpriced at 66-1. I know she really disappointed at Haydock last time when she should have had the conditions, but she's got good Ascot form in the past. So 66-1, you can see her shortening if they get a bit of rain. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, if it's good to firm ground, I thought Valiant Force was quite interesting, coming back. Obviously was the 150-1 winner of the Norfolk Stakes. Was then only half a length behind Big Evs at the Breeders' Cup. Like, it's worth going back and watching that race. Big Evs is prominent, and Valiant Force really does make strides late on, and the price discrepancy between those two doesn't take that run into account. Now, he would need good to firm ground, so if they do miss a lot of this rain, then he'd come into it. But yeah, back with Adrian Murray, he'd have a chance. That's
an important thing to remember. I mean, looking at the weather forecast for Royal Ascot, it looks like it's supposed to rain Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then a bit of sunshine on Saturday. But that's been the forecast recently for around the area, and you haven't getting much rain. It's so hit and miss. So
it's very hard to tell from this sort of anti-post position. So you've got to hold a lot of scenarios in your mind, I think. I was anti-Big Evs in this race. I think he's a great horse. Like you, I think his asset is bouncing and going. I think other tracks will suit him better rather than Ascot. I was a big fan of Regional for this. I think that he is a highly consistent horse at this level. 3 of his last 4 starts form good enough to be able to win this. And I think as long as we don't get too much rain, then he would have a very strong chance. I can see Asphora, who clearly will come on for the run in the Temple. And I've already said that I think believing this is the race for her, and if she gets the start right, and clearly Ascot, there are worse places than Ascot to fluff the start, but even so, you'd still, at this level, you'll still want to get it right. The horse that I thought was overpriced in this is Diligent Harry, who is 20 to 1 and double that somewhere else. And I think that he has proven himself to be as effective on turf as on the all-weather. Excellent third in the Alquoise. I thought he ran superbly in the Duke of York, and I think this stiff 5 is going to suit him really well. I thought he was the horse that was sort of suggesting to me that he's being ignored and he's the overpriced one. But it sounds like we've all got different angles into this.
I mean, although having said that, I do like Twilight Calls as well, assuming that the ground remains at least good. Not only has he got Ryan Moore and he ran really well on his comeback run, but Ascot, that race is suited. You know, he's second to Nature Strip in it. He was 4th to Bradsell. He's a horse that seems suited by that challenge. Doesn't always get the best of luck, but I'm hoping that he'll be able to run to that level again, because I think if he does, he won't be far away when you consider that Nature Strip was an outstanding winner of the King's Stand.
I suppose I was surprised he didn't turn up in the Temple. It just made me wonder why he wasn't there.
Hopefully it's because this is just the race to come to next. I'm hoping there's nothing untoward. Okay, so that's a look at the King Charles III Stakes on the first day, the Tuesday, and also on the Tuesday, the plethora of good racing includes the St James's Palace Stakes, which arguably, along the Coronation Stakes, maybe the Commonwealth Cup, one of the races of the week for me. The 2,000 guineas form represented by the winner, Notable Speech, who's the 11 to 8 favourite, Rosalian 3 to 1. Henry Longfellow, unbeaten as a 2-year-old, excuses on his comeback run. Aidan O'Brien says you'll see a different horse at Ascot, 4 to 1. Metropolitan, the winner of the French Guineas, 8 to 1. Another French challenger, Darlinghurst, 10s. Al Yanabi, 16s. I think Hartham's going for the jersey by all accounts. Al Mackham is going for the mile and a quarter race.
Hampton Court,
yeah.
Right.
So that's a look at the market. Lydia, away you go. I mean, this is a race that I could probably talk about for at least half an hour.
It's a great race, but I'm going to stick with the obvious, I'm afraid. I was really impressed with Notable Speech. I think he, for a horse that was unraced at 2, to be able to come and win the Guineas on his first start on turf, on his 4th career start, and to do it in that fashion was incredibly impressive. And I was really impressed the time before as well, when William Buick clearly consciously set him a task at Kempton, and he was able to overcome it. He was a long way off the pace. He was out of his ground, and he showed the amount of turn of foot to be able to come and win it. Now, I do think that a lot of rain would be a negative for him. I think that will blunt the turn of foot that he has got. But we know he handles a bend as well. That's a right-handed bend, so that's a positive for him. And I just think that whilst I was impressed with Rosalian being able to run down Hartem, who I thought had every chance in the Irish Guineas, everything went right for him. And I think things didn't go right for Rosalian. He can get quite lit up. They had to take the decision to take him back in the race to get him some cover, and then he ran them down late. And I thought that was impressive. But I do think he is a horse that could be vulnerable to the draw. He's going to need some cover. He is inclined to race too keenly, and he just strikes me as being slightly less straightforward. The Notable Speech, whilst I acknowledge that he is very capable. I do think we'll see a different Henry Longfellow. I think he got shuffled back, didn't he? And it looked like he would look rusty as well, even in the French Guineas. Whereas the winner, Metropolitan, I thought was really well positioned and probably slightly flattered by that. I do think I can see that form being turned around, but we have to accept that the horse for this division, the 3-year-old milers at Ballydoyle, was City of Troy until he proved himself to be a middle distance horse. Yeah. So where was Henry Longfellow in all of that, when you've got what I believe to be an above average winner of the Guineas up against him from Godolphin? Well,
it was a similar story with Henry Longfellow last year. City of Troy was the 2-year-old, but Henry Longfellow still remained unbeaten and won a Group 1 himself. And yeah, I totally agree. I think put a line through that run in France. I'm not sure that form will be repeated here. I think Henry Longfellow just had no run, and it's one that you forget about and think about him on what he did as a 2-year-old. I think it's a great race. I'm with Rosalia, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, but I'll let you go.
I'm not going to spend too much time because pretty much Lydia's is written, said everything in my notes. I'm a big fan.
Sorry.
No, you're absolutely fine. Yeah, I was really impressed with Notable Speech. I think the fact that Darlinghurst is in here, who's got form over in 1 mile 1, will make sure that it's whenever you have these and you've got speed horses, I don't actually think they want to crawl. They actually want an even pace, and then you have no question marks. So yeah, I think the fact that Darlinghurst will be in here, beat the French Derby second first look, but Chanty over 1 mile and 1. Yeah, I think it's going to be set up for Notable Speech, and I'd be surprised if it was beaten. The thing that led me to, I mean, I'm obviously biased. I love Rosalian, but on Guinea's Day at Newmarket, my first reaction was he's been beaten fair and square by a better horse who quickened up better than he did. Then looking back at the race, I just felt they went so hard through the middle portion of the 2,000 guineas at Newmarket that it ended up dragging that sprint finish out of Rosalian at the wrong time. I mean, he travelled, I think a lot of times people don't, I always feel that horses that travel really well in the race, they get underestimated for the effort that they're putting in because they're travelling so well. But all they're doing is they're doing it without the jockey asking them to do that. If the jockey was asking him to do it, you'd say, oh, he stayed on really well. But he's actually doing it without needing the jockey to do it. And that's what happened to him in the Irish Guineas, is that he comes out the gates, as you point out, he's doing a bit too much, then he's got to be reined back, and because of all that, it was, I thought, a huge performance to round down Hartem. So I'm just thinking a slightly more conventional pace of the race might give him more of a chance to utilise that turn of foot for a different position in the race, rather than where he used it in the 2,000 guineas at Newmarket. But then that is also subject to how they're drawn and what happens in the early part of the race.
He could get a wonderful draw, or he could get a terrible draw.
Yeah, if they go a fair pace and he's sitting maybe 2 back, 1 back, 2 off the rail, I'd be perfect. It'd be perfect sitting on. But then you don't know where he's going to end up. So, but if he had a conventional mile race at Ascot with a decent draw, I think he could beat Notable Speech. But what a race it is!
It's a good race.
Yeah,
what a race it is.
It's the race that I'm most looking forward to the whole week.
It's doing what it should do, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Bringing
Absolutely.
together all the Guineas form.
Correct. It's great when the good horses all get together. Okay, we move on and talk about the big race on Wednesday, which is the Prince of Wales' Stakes. Now, Gus Rodan is the 7-4 favourite. White Birch is 2-1. In Spiral, 11-2. And as Lydia said, there's been musings that might be the race for her. Horizon Door, spoken about positively, 6-1. Luxembourg, 10s. Alflela, 12s. Blue Rose Sen, 14s. And any price you like, the rest. Steve, go. Who's going to win it? I know that you and I have been White Birch fans for a long time.
Yeah.
I personally think he should be favourite for the race.
Yeah, that's the first line of my note. I cannot believe White Birch isn't favourite for this. 3 from 3 this season, proved an absolute revelation, dropping down to 1 mile and 2, which on the back of last year you wouldn't think would have suited, but I just think it's all in his mind. He's become a lot more professional. The way that Colin Keane rode him with confidence last time to just track and take a pull 2 furlongs out alongside of Gus Rodan, I thought was just absolutely brilliant. Put 3 lengths between them at the line. Even if you don't get that much rain, he handled good to firm ground in a Dante, ran really, really well. I just think it's the fact that the soft ground inconveniences other horses as opposed to actually that White Birch needs it. I wouldn't like in Spiral for this. It's a stiff 1 mile and 2, and if you get any sort of rain to bring this even to good to soft, I wouldn't like her for this at all in there as well. The track would be a slight question mark for pretty much all these other than Horizon Door. Obviously, Auguste Rodin has only ran at Ascot once, and it was the complete blowout in the King George. White Birch hasn't ran there either. Blue Rose N, I'm still not convinced that this trainer switch that they've done. I'd like to see more from her. And then you'd want loads and loads of rain for Royal Rhyme if he was to stand any chance. I just think I went round and round this race and then came back to White Birch, and I do actually think it's a really good price.
Yeah, I thought he beat Auguste Rodin fair and square.
So did I, yeah. I mean, Auguste Rodin, up until that point, had 2 ways of running, didn't he? He either won or he blew out. This is the first time that he did neither, really. And there was no real excuse as far as I could see. And, you know, White Birch seems to have improved quite a bit this season. I do think he handles quick ground. I don't think that's actually going to be an issue here anyway. But it might be that he's at his very best with Kurt, but I think that's going to be irrelevant to this particular race. And for Inspiral, I do think the ground is relevant. I think the trip and the track would be fine for her, provided it was quick. I think she really bounces off a quick surface, and I don't think she's going to get that. I do understand why they're going for this race though, rather than the Queen Anne. I mean, just listen to how we're talking about it. That if that is what the decision is, it is the weaker of the two contests, isn't it? It is dangling there as low fruit compared with the Queen Anne. I'm not doing down White Birch or Auguste Rodin in any kind of way, but as you start delving a little bit deeper, there are not other horses that you can come up with sort of left field angles. Blue Rose said is a lurker there. She is lurking. At her very best, the Opera win. Obviously, she wasn't ridden to good effect in the Nassau. Yes, her new yard. She hasn't yet proved herself in that kind of way, but maybe the trainer did see something in the Ispahan that I haven't seen that suggests that actually she should have done better than that. So she would be a lurker for me. But I suppose I'm kind of I don't have a. I'm going to wait for the conditions themselves, but I suppose at this stage, with what we know, it would be White Birch as well.
Yeah, White Birch for me as well. I think the trainer of Blue Rose, Maurizio Guarnieri, said she should have been given more daylight sooner, pulled out to the left, if I remember exactly correct, to be allowed to get ahead of steam up, basically.
I can't see. I don't feel that. Whereas I'm with him on the Big Rock analysis. I'm not so much with him on that analysis.
It may have been a different story had Passenger gone for this race, because obviously by Ulysses, Inspiral, the Cheveley Park connection, I think they might own a portion of, or they're involved with Passenger to an extent through the Niarchos family. So without Passenger in the race, it now looks as if this will probably be the option for Inspiral, but I still think White Birch is going to. He just looks so straightforward this season, hasn't he? And he dismissed Auguste Rodin last time out. Okay, let's talk about the Gold Cup, which is a big race on Thursday. Kyprios, the 4-5 favourite. Vauban 6-1. Gregory 7s. Keys Chorister 12s. Coltrane 16s. Point Lonsdale 16s. Same price as Sweet William and Trawlerman. And 20-1 bar those. Lydia, Kyprios won at, was it 12-1 on last time out?
And 13-2 on the time before.
Has he done enough?
No.
No.
I don't. Not to be the price he is. Yeah. Not for anybody to want to back him at that price would be my view. I think he is priced up on his reputation and what he has done previously. So he had a standout 2022 season, absolutely fantastic, when the Vintage Club, the Savile Beg, the Ascot Gold Cup, the Goodwood Cup, the Irish St Ledger and the Cadran. I mean, amazing season.
The Cadran was extraordinary.
Absolutely, and that was his best performance. It built as well. It got better and better, amazing this season. And if he's in that kind of form, he wins this, and he should be the price he is. However, he then had a setback. We only saw him twice the following season, and on his second start, he did better, but he was still beaten by Trawlerman in the Long Distance Cup. And so far, we've seen him twice this season, usual preparation, Vintage Crop, Savile Beg. He's beaten the same bunch of horses who are markedly inferior to all of the horses that he's going to be facing here, who have been actually facing each other in more competitive contests. So whilst I think he is very much in the mix and could well win this, he is priced on his outstanding form, which has got a bit of dust on it.
Yes. Also, I think he's priced not only as with a bit of dust on it, but he's also priced on the fact that this is Aidan O'Brien's MO, and you're playing Aidan O'Brien into the price, whether it's with Yates, and the preparation and horses that look, even Johnny Murtagh talking about Yates speaks about the fact that the horse appears to be half the horse that he was winning or getting beaten in the Savile Beg or whatever, and then going to Ascot, and Johnny gets on board and says he's a different horse today. That's built into what we're talking about here with Kyprios. Because if, as Lydia said, it is Kyprios of 2 seasons ago, these other horses are going to be miles behind him.
Yeah, only odds on favourite this week, you'd imagine. And I think he'll win this.
Go on, go for it.
for a lot of the reasons you just said, I mean, he's never going to be a horse that's going to win on the bridle. Like, even that Cadran win, when he won by 20 lengths, I think he was roused along for about the last half a mile, came over, veered left, saw all the families having their picnics, and then still went on and win. Like, he's just, I don't think he's ever going to be that kind of Stradivarius type Gold Cup horse who you're going to see loom up on the bridle and then go clear. He's always going to need that rousting along, as Ryan Moore does so well in there, just to make sure that he does enough to win. The alternatives in there, you've got Gregory next in the market at 6-1, and he was well beaten in his prep. I get the fact that he'll come on for that reappearance run and he will like the further distance, but I just think Kyprios, if I had to back him or lay him at the prices, I'd prefer to back him than lay him.
Well, he's 4 to 5 with Bet365, you say.
I don't think I'd be laying him, because for the reasons that you say, but I couldn't possibly back him. Funny enough, I do like Gregory for the reasons that you've just touched upon. He won the Queen's Vase last year, so we know he likes the track. I thought he shaped really well in the Yorkshire Cup. He was never going to enjoy most of the back end of last season of what he had to do. Dropping back for the Great Voltigeur wasn't right, and he hadn't raced as a 2-year-old. I think he was still really immature last season. I think the stint Ledger was a bit too much too soon. I think now, sort of seeing him again, I thought he shaped really well in the Yorkshire Cup. He's the kind of horse that I think is going to relish 2.5 miles, whereas Vauban, who finished in front of him, I don't. I see him as a quicker horse who doesn't want that far.
And you were York when Gregory ran. He looked like he was going to need the run.
Very much
pretty
so.
Obvious to anybody watching.
He's quite a big horse anyway, but yes, he did. Yeah.
I thought Sweet William would get placed in the race. I like the way he was ridden last time at Sandown. That suggests to me that a similar sort of ride will see the best of Sweet William. Now, he's not straightforward, but at least Rab Havlin knows what he's going to be doing on that horse, and the plan is already set.
Yeah, the concern with him, I think they did the headgear trick one race too soon.
Yes.
Because I think if you're going to play the switch from blinkers to a visor, I think you should have done it in this race.
Well, I'm kind of hoping, when the horse switches headgear and they have a run of maybe 2, 3, 4 runs, and then the effect dissipates. So I'm hoping we're in the second of 4.
Where he is too clever for that.
Right, that's the Gold Cup on Thursday. Friday at Ascot, we've got a couple of very good races. First up, we'll talk about the Commonwealth Cup. Inisherin's, I think, going to be supplemented. I think it's pretty clear that's going to be the case. But Van Dijk is the favourite, who was behind Inisherin with Bet365. 7-2, 9-2, Inisherin. Elite Status, 7-1. Big fan on the left of Elite Status. Bucanera Fuerte, 8-1. River Tiber, 9s. They've got big Evs. Jassur's in there at 12s. Porta Fortuna, is she going to run, do you know, this or the...
Not sure.
Coronation? Still waiting for...
Coronation, I think.
Right.
Okay, Coronation.
I think I'd prefer in this, if I'm honest. But anyway.
I would prefer her in this. It's Spiff 6 rather than...
I prefer Ramatuelle in this as well. But.
I prefer Unquestionable in this. You're all running your horses in the wrong race, trainers.
Is that why this race is under threat?
Right, let's deal with the Commonwealth Cup, Lydia, and Van Dijk.
I am worried that he is not channeling his ability in the right direction. Okay, it was his seasonal debut, maybe he was overly fresh, but there was something overly unfettered about it for me, and I just don't see why he'll turn the form around with Inisherin, who you mentioned the fractions that Inisherin took the 2,000 guineas through. And when he was dropped down for the Sandy Lane to 6 furlongs, he just looked a natural sprinter to me. And I don't see any... I think Sheikh Mohammed Obeid Al Maktoum has got this race every which way, really, because I think Elite Status is the other key horse in the race. But I hope that Inisherin is supplemented, and if he is, I think he'll win it.
I'm an Inisherin fan. I think last time, when we talked about Haydock the last time, I was saying those fractions, exactly that. He's a sprinter out and out. But there are still those supporters of Van Dijk, including the trainers, Simon and Ed Crisford, who are adamant that he is still the champion sprinting 2-year-old of last year, and we're going to see it at Ascot.
He will improve for that, and it did stink of a run that he did need that reappearance because he was fresh and then he didn't quite finish out his race, and that was a stereotypical in need of the run. But this is a proper field. Like, it's lovely of Sheikh Mohammed Obeid to supplement a pacemaker for Elite Status in this race to ensure they go a good clip. And yeah, I was just blown away by Elite Status. I loved him early on in his career. He's got form at Ascot. He finished 3rd in the Norfolk. He's got form on softer ground if the rain was to come. Inisherin doesn't have that question mark either. The concern last time was the drop-in trip and the ground, and he passed those with flying colours. But there was just something about Elite Status at Newbury in that Carnarvon Stakes that I just absolutely loved. It was quite a strong field as well, to be fair. They were race-fit rivals in Relief Rally and A Day in Devon. And He travelled well, he put the race to bed, and yeah, I just absolutely loved him. I can't see him out of the 3 here, so at 7 to 1 with Bet365 is definitely going to be an each way bet for me.
All right. 2 for Inisherin, 1 for Elite Status. Van Dijk, sadly, none. Buccaneer. I mean, the good thing about this race is that horses come in here off the back of smart performances. Apart, obviously, Van Dijk has to bounce back, but Inisherin, Elite Status, Buccaneer, Fuerte, Jasur, you know, it's a strong race. So another good one to look forward to on the Friday. The Coronation Stakes as well on the Friday also appears to be an absolute cracking race because Lydia highlighted it early on in the show. We've got the clash of Guineas form. We've got the Guineas at Newmarket, which El Malka won, Ramatuelle, Porta Fortuna. There's the Irish Guineas, in which Fallen Angel won, but Opera Singer behind on that occasion. Everyone seems to think that will be a foregone conclusion that she'll turn the form around. And she's the 94 favourite. Fallen Angel 7-2, El Malka 11-2, Ramatuelle 6-1, Porta Fortuna 8, Devoted Queen 12. We've also got the French Guineas winner in there as well, Rahia, and Romantic Style, who's behind her. So, how do you play this one? I mean, are we going to include the Aidan O'Brien factor into the fact that Opera Singer is the 9-4 favourite here?
There is an element of that, isn't there? That there has to be. But that said, also, if you listen carefully to what he said, this horse was ruled out of the Guineas very early on in the course of the year because she'd had a setback, and it was very much a stepping stone race in the Irish Guineas. And she ran really well. She was well positioned, but she ran really well. Fallen Angel was also well positioned in that race, and she had done too much at Newmarket towards the 4 and ended up being quite well beaten. And every filly who did a lot up front, apart from Ramatuelle, end up fading away. And of the first 5 home, I think it might even have been 6 home. 5 of them were in the back 5 positions for most of the race. That includes El Malka, and Porta Fortuna would be another. So I can, and the arguments have been made that had Ramatuelle been held onto for a little bit longer, then she might have been able to win. And I can see that. I think there's margins in it, and I wouldn't want to, stand on a hill for that argument. But I can see it very much. Again, I feel that she's not very big. It could be that she doesn't actually build on that first run. I have that in the back of my mind about her. I also think she might be vulnerable to a poor draw here as well, for the Coronation Stakes. And although El Malka was well positioned, there's something I like about her. She's only had 3 runs in her life. I thought she was unfortunate in the Nell Gwyn. I don't think the conditions suited her that much. The way the race panned out suited her. I think she's unexposed at this trip, and at the prices, I think I'm going to be sticking with her, even though I accept that she was better positioned than Ramatuelle in the 1,000 guineas.
Okay, I'm an El Malka fan, as I have been all season long, and I still can't believe she got beaten in her trial. So. That's annoyed me a lot because I thought she should have won that anyway. But and she was a good price that day, even better price than the Guineas. I'll be sticking with El Malka. I think in the Guineas that she was still really green.
She was.
I think she struggled a little bit coming down the dip, and then she took a bit of organising, but then picked up really, really strongly to the point where I think you'll see an even better filly.
The dip point is a really good one, and I should have mentioned that. You're absolutely right. I mean, I think a more conventional track is going to suit her a lot better.
Yeah. But again, the likely size of the field will be an issue, considering where she's going to end up. You imagine she's going to be held up to be delivered late, so hopefully it'll be a clean run. Where do you stand on the Coronation Stakes?
Opposite to Kyprios, I'd be laying Opera Singer on the day if she's anywhere near the 9-4 that's currently available. I could make a case for 5 or 6 of the others here, and you've done perfectly rounding up most of them. Sheen Murphy's now going to get on Ramatuelle, but there's definitely no negative coming around a bend at Ascot. Fallen Angel, was impressive. I feel as if Opera Singer is being priced as if she was beaten a closing head.
Yes.
In this, she's beaten 4 3/4 lengths,
and a tiring 4
3/4
lengths.
I get that she'll come forward from that and the pre-race quote. Thankfully, they were pre-race. John Gosden's kind of got into a bit of a habit of saying after the event that they'll come on for the run, and everyone knew going into that race that Opera Singer would come onto it. But 4 3/4 lengths is a big distance to be able to try and reverse.
And the Boussac form hasn't exactly been advertised, has it?
No. With Fallen Angel, and then you throw in all of the others in there as well. And if she's anywhere near 9-4 on the day, I'll be laying her as opposed to backing something else because I'd prefer to have 5-6 running for me.
Okay.
See
So
that.
against Opera Singer, but 2 for El Malka. Okay, so that's the Coronation Stakes on the Friday. We'll move on and talk about a couple of races on the Saturday. The Hardwick. Continuous is the 9-4 favourite with Bet365. Middle Earth 7-2. Rebels Romance 7-1. I don't think Emily Upjohn's running at Ascot at all.
Right.
I think Luxembourg's probably, if he does run, he'll be probably in the Group 1. You wouldn't imagine him going for the Hardwick. But anyway, I think he might miss Ascot as well. But I don't think he's featured on Aidan O'Brien's running plans that he sent out earlier in the week. I'll let Lydia talk about one horse in particular because I'm a big fan of that horse who won the Melrose last year. But I'll let you kick off first of all.
Yeah, I think Continuous is a vulnerable favourite here. I think it's probably a bit underestimated what he did last year, and I was impressed with what he did in the Voltigeur and in the Ledger. But all the vibes around the yard, which pre-race you can pretty much trust, is that he's going to come on a lot from this. So I think he's probably a vulnerable favourite. I know you're a big fan of Middle Earth. I'd be concerned with ground if they get any more rain because I do think he is probably going to be better on good or faster. The curveball in this is missed the cut. Won the Golden Gates handicap at this meeting a couple of seasons ago when trained by George Bowie. Was then sold to race in America where he's done really well. You'll probably know the form a bit better than what I did, but the dirt form is good. I don't really know too much around dirt racing, but then you look at his turf form. 2 of those victories have come on turf at Santa Anita. Most recently finished second behind Silver Knot in a Grade 2 at Keeneland. That rival then won the Man of War Stakes at Belmont by 4.5 lengths, where Nation Pride was back in third. So you do get some kind of comparisons with these UK races in there. That's brilliant American turf form on the face of it. And it isn't like you've got a question mark around the track with him either. Obviously, having won at Ascot in his career.
Yep.
James Doyle's been booked for the ride. I don't think there's many that ride Ascot better than him. And at around 12-1, in what I do think is a relatively weak contest, and though you do have question marks around those at the top of the market with the well-being of Continuous and the ground for Middle Earth, I think 12-1's pretty fair around Mr. Cut.
Interesting. Yes, Mr. Cut 12-1 Bet365. Lydia, if the ground was firm, which I really hope it is, or at least quick, then I personally think Middle Earth is a King George horse.
I think he could be. I think there's at the moment you wouldn't close your mind to that idea at all. I think I was really impressed with what he did post Melrose as well last season, and he looks like he's got a really strong profile for being able to go on this season. I share the concern about Continuous on seasonal debut. Otherwise, I think I would think he would win this. The 5th in the Arc I thought was a really strong performance. He was supplemented for it. You know, he'd had pretty tough season. He's pretty adaptable. You know. But the concern is the fact that he's coming here against horses that have already on the roll, are already up and running for their season, and this could be a stepping stone for him. I'm intrigued by Rebels Romance, and I feel like he's a very big price. People might dismiss him by saying, maybe he needs a certain set of conditions that the rest of the world provide him in order to be able to show his best. I think he's just an improved horse. And I think his earlier career form suggests that he should be perfectly fine here. And he's also got a run style that should be really suited to this.
Well, when you look at his CV, I mean, he's a Breeders' Cup turf winner. He won the Shima Classic. Some might point out this season that was a little bit fortuitous because of the way the race was run and they got a bit detached, the front 3 or 4. He's won in Chartin. It's some CV he's got, and he's 7-1.
Well, exactly. He's got the best CV in the race, and he's 7-1, third in.
But I don't think on fast ground he's got the best turn of foot. I think Middle Earth probably would have the most potent turn of foot of the horses at the top of the market for this race, I think, over a mile and a half.
But they can control the race from the front here, potentially, with him.
Yeah, well, he came from last to first last time.
I know, but he can do that. It'll be adaptable.
Yes. I'm hoping that the ground's quick and Middle Earth wins the Hardwick.
I think he's going to have a good season, whatever happens.
Well, I'm hoping he wins the Hardwick, then wins the King George, and then goes and wins the Melbourne Cup, which is what he was bought for. So.
The King George is going to be a really interesting race because we've talked around the 3-year-old races so far, and it looks a really good crop of 3-year-olds, I would say. And you'd probably, races like the Sussex Stakes and the King George, you'd probably have the 3-year-olds to be odds on to win them.
And this hasn't been mentioned because obviously in the post City of Troy stuff, they've all been going on about the Travers and all that sort of
Yes,
stuff.
yes.
Personally, there's the old Nashwan
Yes.
line in me that
Yes.
wants to see Detroit go Derby, Eclipse, the old Dancing Brave
Yes.
type thing. King George. It'd be
Yes.
brilliant if he did that. And
With his pedigree, though, there was always going to be a temptation that would be impossible to resist to campaign him in America. I mean, it was evident. We were talking about it from after the superlative last year.
yeah, well, he'll still have that pedigree.
He
It's
will,
not
he
gonna
will,
go anywhere.
but he can enhance it, can't he, potentially? Or,
Yes. King George, Arc, Breeders' Cup Classic. There you go. Easy. The Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes is the last of the big races we're going to focus on at Royal Ascot on the Saturday. And Kinross is the 11-2 favourite with Bet365. Millstream 6-1. Shartash 8s. Mitbahi 10s. Regional 10s. Should have been a ring 12s. Again, ground, I think, even though there was a point in last season that I wasn't sure that the ground, or the season before, the ground was key to Kinross. I think it's a factor again in how you play this race.
yeah, I think it is. I think that's right. And also, there is some degree to which he plays himself in, I think, as well. And I think that would be the other factor about Kinross, that I think he'll be a bit shaky. I mean, he's not a short price favourite. Millstream seems to be improved. It was a blanket finish, though, wasn't it, for the Duke of York? I think he enjoyed the more conventional track as compared to Newmarket. I think Washington Heights, comparatively still, is a very, very big price. Looking at that Duke of York form, they don't. But he backed it up last time after winning on seasonal debut. He backed it up, and I don't think he got the run of things. He was stuck out on the wing in the Duke of York, and other horses were able to race against each other. This is a race that confuses me. I'll be completely honest. There's going to be factors in terms of how much rain they get, which way to go. I mean, Mitbahi received a beautiful ride last time, but he's going to need, and Ascot should play to his strengths as well. The over 6 furlongs, that's going to suit him. I was quite taken with how Art Power stuck on against Regional, having hassled him in the Greenland Stakes. And again, I think he's quite a big price at 16-1 now that he's shown that he can do Ascot. Yeah. So, I'll be honest, this is the race that I'm most up in the air about, apart from I won't be backing Kinross, unless he drifts to a very big price, but I won't be backing him.
I should also be waiting for the ground. But there are a number of factors. Also, those races that you mentioned, the Greenlands, the race at York, even Wizard of Eyes run at Ascot, because I understand this is the race that he's going for.
Charlie Fellows is really strong on this horse.
He's buzzing about this horse. And you tipped him when he won the Victoria Cup.
I did. Yeah, I can understand why they're rolling the big dice. Personally, £3 higher, I'd be running in the Wokingham. But like Lydia's gone through, there are question marks around a lot. It'd be more around the time of the year for Kinross than it would be the ground for me. I'd be against him even if it does come off soft here. Shartash, I thought, was probably the one that I think is fairly solid. Won both of his starts this season since joining Archie Watson over 7 furlongs, lending to the fact that you'd think a stiff 6 furlongs at Ascot would suit him. Archie Watson does really well at this meeting. 3 winners in it last year. Had also won with Soldier's Call in the Windsor Castle, so does particularly well with sprinters at Royal Ascot. Recent purchase, obviously, from Wathnow Racing. James Doyle will be aboard. No negative. I thought 8-1 was pretty fair, but I'll be cheering on Wizard of Eye just for...
Yes, for old time's sake. Yes, last month's sake, I do like Millstream. I get what Lydia said about where he raced and where Washington Heights raced, but the only thing was that he met trouble a couple of times. I think he probably would have won slightly easier. Don't think that much, but he would have won a bit easier, and I feel he's improving still. I think he's got more to come. He improved through last season, going through handicaps and into Patting Company.
And it's likely, I suppose, that this track will suit him better than it will Washington Heights, probably, even though I think that horse will run admirably and is just the wrong price.
And Jane Chappell-Hyam's runners at Ascot, she, few and far between, but the ones she runs, they're generally around the tin. So, Millstream for me. Okay. Is there anything else, and I'm sure there must be something else, over the course of the 5 days at Ascot that we haven't mentioned yet, that you would like, both of you would like to pick up on? Obviously saving your best bet for later.
Right, okay. So I won't mention the Wokingham.
That's my best bet. Oh, that's my best bet as well. Oh, no. The last time this happened, Andy Holding decimated me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We had the 1-2 at Epsom, right. First race, Persica, for Andy Holding and Portsmouth for me. So
Oh,
you know what's going to
no.
happen here. Anyway, carry on, Lydia.
So I've got a flyer and I've got a horse, unusually, that I'm quite interested in that's a 2-year-old. So generally 2-year-old racing kind of passes me by to some degree. I like stayers, so So I mean, I start getting interested in 2-year-olds. One once they're handicapped, and 2 once we're talking about 7 furlongs. But nonetheless, I really liked Mountain Breeze when she made her debut. She just looked. There's something about her. There's something that really sort of spoke to me about her. So I can see that I think she's got a great chance in the Albany Stakes. Yeah. I thought that a really great start at Newmarket. She looked like the 6 furlongs would suit her really well. I just liked her a lot. And the other one is a bit of a flyer. And again, this sort of, I don't know what you do, but handicap-wise, I do tend to have a view and then I try and look at it again when I've actually got the decks, because so many things can change by that point. So I reserve the right to change my mind, but I'm half interested in Streets of Gold for the Royal Hunt Cup after the way that he kept on in the Victoria Cup. I'm just wondering whether he keeps getting outpaced over 6 and 7 furlongs. He was outpaced there again. If he shows some improvement over an extra furlong, he is reasonably treated, and he's got a little bit of a little bit of class, latent class there. So slightly interested in him.
Okay, and he obviously was a very smart 2-year-old. I think, very, very interesting contender in the Hunt Cup. Steve?
I've got 3 that I'll mention. In the Wolverton, I thought Botanical was the standard group horse in the handicap last time. They pulled him out on good to firm ground. So, yeah, any recent rain would obviously then boost his chances. He's around 9-2. He's got £7 to find with Isra on ratings, but I think their 2 careers are going in opposite directions.
Yes. Very much so.
So, yeah, Botanical at 9-2, I think is pretty worthy towards the top of the market in the Wolverton. In the Royal Hunt Cup, I thought Talus of Olver was really solid, like model consistency. His form over a mile has resulted in 4 wins and 4 places from 9 runs. That disappointing effort was on heavy ground, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere near heavy ground. We'll probably good to soft would be absolutely fine. It's well known that all weather form transfers quite well to the straight course at Ascot, so the fact that 3 of his 4 wins have been on the all weather wouldn't concern me at all. 4-year-olds have won 8 out of the last 9 renewals of the Royal Hunt Cup. Richard Hannon won it with a 4-year-old in Mr Aviator in 2008 as well. Looking through the entries, I imagine they've got quite a good chance of having Ryan Moore on board once again, which is obviously no negative, and he's around 16-1, so Talus of Olver in the Royal Hunt Cup for me. And then lastly, the fact that they're running Ingot in the Coventry Stakes at 25-1 really caught my eye. Now, the Gosdens have only had 3 2-year-old runners this season. No winners, a couple of seconds. So I went back and watched this. Beautifully bred, Blue Point out of Integral, who won the Duke of Cambridge at this meeting in the Sun Chariot. So brilliant pedigree-wise. Was ran over 7 furlongs at Kempton on his debut. Was a bit green, was actually beaten by Wimbledon Hawkeye, who will be reopposing in this race. But I just thought that stank of a race where Ingot needed his debut, and the actual winner was a bit more clued up despite their prices in the market that day. They often run 2-year-olds in novice races under a penalty, so the fact that he hasn't even ran a race yet and they're putting him into the Coventry, I imagine he's probably stepped forward a lot from that effort. Yes, GB Park may be influencing them with a runner there, but I just thought a 25-1 with those connections, it really did take my eye.
That's a very interesting horse, as you say. The pedigree screams talent. So Ingot, the 2-year-old in the Coventry for the Gosden team. I'll put up a couple before saving my alternative to Lydia's selection.
It could be the same horse.
It could be. That would be great, wouldn't it? We actually, that's it. We haven't told each other what it is. So the other 2 that I'm going to mention in the Hunt Cup as well. I'm keen on Holloway Boy, who I thought looked really good on his 2 runs. He's shown, I think, that all the ability is still there. He obviously won the Chesham first time out as a 2-year-old, and he's a big, strong horse. So into a handicap, something like the Royal Hunt Cup, taking a bit of weight, I don't think that'll be an issue for him. So I think he'll run well for Carl Burke. London City's a horse that I adore. He won at York. I still think he looked green and a bit clueless still.
Yeah, fair enough.
He's got that pedigree, another Justify out of Winter, who was a top-class horse, and she got better as she had more racing. And I think he's one of maybe 2 horses that Aidan O'Brien has pointed at the King George V handicap. So London City would be...
Best race of the week.
Always is.
It always is.
Always is. So London City would be the horse. Have you got one for that? Or
Well, I
sure?
like London City. He's on my shortlist. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Great. Let's hope we're on the same shortlist for the Wokingham. All right. So that's our Royal Ascot preview. Before we get into our best bets of the meeting, just to let you know of a free-to-play 6 horses challenge. It's available every weekend with prize pools available for 5 and 4 correct predictions, as well as a jackpot for all 6. T's and C's apply. So this is the moment we've all been building up to. It is the time for our best bets of the week. Let's leave Lydia's Wokingham selection for the minute. Let's go to Steve, first of all.
I have touched on it earlier in the show. It's in the Prince of Wales Stakes. I just think White Birch should be favourite. Currently available at 2-1 with Bet365, which I'm more than happy to take. I just think he's been an absolute revelation this season, winning all 3 starts over a mile and 2. The way that Colin Keane had the confidence to just wait alongside Auguste Rodin last time, I can't see any reason why Auguste Rodin would reverse the form. The ground should be absolutely fine for him. Not that I think that he does need soft ground. I just think it inconveniences his rivals. And yeah, at 2-1, I think White Birch will go our favourite and win.
Okay, White Birch in the Prince of Wales Stakes. Now I've written down my Wokingham selection.
Okay, so have I. Yeah, no cheating.
Okay, yeah. This is like an episode of Countdown. I feel like Carol Vorderman. Okay,
Go on.
Should I go?
Go for it.
Okay, my Wokingham selection, my best bet of the week is Significantly. Oh, no. Oh, God, no.
Go on.
Jimmy Camacho obviously was a really improving sprinter last season. And considering you go back to 2021, he won at Royal Ascot when he was trained by Carl Burke. He's actually got a very good record in races where they're big fields, 18, 19, 20, 21 runners. And last season did very well at the back end of the last season. He won at Ayr, finished second at Doncaster. He is occasionally reluctant to load and slowly away. But as Lydia mentioned earlier on in the show, that can not be a problem at Ascot because you have plenty of time. Stiff 6 furlongs will suit him. He ran really well, I thought, at Newmarket where he got hampered late on. And the 2 horses either side of him, one was Mitbahi, just behind him, and Kurdos was the other horse as well. And I thought he would have gone close to winning that Palace House at Newmarket had he got a clean run. So back into a handicap. He had an entry, I think it was at Newbury, but they skipped that, come straight here. He's 16-1 Bet365. I'm just hoping for a decent draw and that he's on the right part of the track. I cannot see him being out of the frame significantly if that's the case. If he gets a decent draw and he's on the right part of the track at 16-1 in the Wokingham.
It isn't significantly. And it's not as big a price. I mean, it's not as exciting as yours, but it's Dark Trooper, who's got a tremendous course and distance record, has won twice in handicap company there, ran really well in the Bengoff Stakes at the back end of last year, rather fluffed the start, ended up in the wrong place in the race, and then even when he was getting into it, got stopped. He ran poorly in Doha, but that looked like a career best performance at Saint-Cloud last time, and he just looks like the horse that is absolutely ideal for the Wokingham to me. The pace setup is an ideal test, a strongly run race. He'll come up from off the pace late. I think he's ideal for it.
All the things I think for Significantly as well. So. Okay, so just to recap, Steve has gone for White Birch in the Prince of Wales Stakes, 2-1 with Bet365 at the moment, and Lydia, a Dark Trooper, who is 12-1 for the Wokingham, and I've gone for Significantly, also in the Wokingham, at 16-1. So that's our look at Royal Ascot. Just before we close off the show, I think we'd just like to pay our respects to a colleague. Certainly Lydia and I have worked closely with Steve knew and Jonathan Neeson, who sadly passed away earlier this week. It's been quite difficult, if I'm honest, talking about Jonathan over the last week because he has gone quite quickly. But Lydia, you were very close to him. So was I. He had some wonderful characteristics, and it's amazing the number of people who he has had an impact on. I think you mentioned it in your tributes to him in the Racing TV column. don't think he was quite aware how many people he actually had a positive effect on.
Oh, it's great, isn't it? How many people, sort of viewers, fans, even participants have asked after him when he was ill and have paid tribute to him since. He has touched so many people, and it's because of that amazing way that he had to talk about horse racing, have that amount of knowledge, but be able to approach it in that singular kind of way and with so much humour. I think he connected so well to everybody, and he had the ability to speak out and to make points that were sometimes uncomfortable but needed to be said. It was something we were talking about at the start of the show. That was something that Jonathan could do, but he also had a wonderful sense of humour, and as I have said, I think my abiding memory of Jonathan will be the amount of times that I was just helpless with laughter in his company. He just made me laugh so much. I mean, he could be gloriously infuriating, absolutely infuriating, and I will miss that dreadfully as well.
Yeah. He had a wonderful gift, Steve, as Lydia said, on television, for being succinct and to the point, and knowing what was important when you came to talk about a horse race.
Yeah.
It just seemed to have the perfect blend between humour and providing informative analysis, but with warmth. Like, I was never lucky enough to actually meet him, but just through the telly and watching channels, you just got that warmth from him.
He was also, I was talking to someone this morning actually talking about what made him such a good pundit, and I was saying, for me, it was the fact that he demanded, without almost saying it, just the way he conducted himself, he demanded that whoever he worked with met his standards.
Yes.
And he did it in that way that a teacher does. You just know that,
Yes.
as he was, you just know that you're working with, or you're doing work for that teacher. So you've got to make sure that all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that teacher is going to give you bad marks.
It was challenging, but in the best possible way.
And if you ever slipped up innocently, having done your work or whatever, his supportiveness and the way he would pick you up and help guide you through a tough situation.
He would relentlessly ridicule you for the rest of the day, obviously. I mean,
he would use that waspish, as it often is said about him, sense of humour to take the piss. I tell
he
you,
really would.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure whether I could put it that way.
Yeah, I'm going to use
loved doing that.
I'm going to use that. I hope that stays in. And I also enjoyed the fact that he used to walk up, when we played golf occasionally, he would walk up to the first tee, not having warmed up, with a roll-up in the corner of his mouth, walk up to the tee, put his ball down, put the roll-up next to the ball on the tee, the shortest backswing known to man, hit it 200 yards down
Into
the
the
fairway.
water.
I was being kind to him. But yes, most of the time into the water. He'd enjoy that. And then pick up his roll-up and then march away. Glorious memories of a glorious man. Our condolences to his friends and family, but we will all miss him a great deal. So. Before we also close off, Lydia.
Oh, you're going to ask? I was hoping you'd forgotten.
No, I didn't.
I can't remember one. Have you got one for me?
One for you?
Yeah.
It's
just kind of because like
it's pretty much Lydia v Nicky Henderson.
Yeah. It's just soft. It's heavy.
Well, the Times suggests something different, Nicky. Well, it's not.
I was quite pleased that I said I think we'll agree to differ. I'm pleased that I said that.
Well, either way, you have left an impression on people who watch it. They remember it.
They do,
and that's a positive thing.
I mean, there will have been lots of different sort of challenges over the years, and some of them will linger and some of them won't. But you kind of, I mean, inevitably you kind of sort of move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. That's almost really what racing is about. There's always going to be the next challenging interview. There's always going to be the next, question that needs to be posed, isn't there?
Yes, and that's the beauty of our sport. It just keeps rolling along, and we enjoy the journey, most of it anyway. That is it for this week's episode of Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Many thanks to it. I hope you've enjoyed being on the show.
I have. I feel like I was blushing powerfully during the flattery of the early part of the programme.
It's nice to be able to, we don't work as much as we used to.
We don't. No, it is nice to work with you. It's very, very nice.
Yes. And as always, Steve, hopefully you can go through the card at Ascot one of the days.
Yeah.
Not easy.
A problem. No question.
Easy peasy.
If you can do it at Lingfield in the middle of the week, you can do it at Ascot. Come on.
Which one do you think is easier?
Ascot.
There you go.
Yeah, easy.
I'll have that ticked off by Tuesday.
Okay.
Don't forget, as always, if you've liked what you've heard or seen in any of our previous podcast episodes, or indeed this one, then leave a kind review in the comments section. I've certainly been enjoying reading some of them recently. It's been quite interesting hearing some of your views. We'll be back next Tuesday to have a look back at the meeting and ahead to the Irish Derby in the company of Martin Dwyer, which will hopefully be some more fun. But for now, from Steve, Lydia and myself and the Racing Weekly team, thank you very much and bye-bye.